And welcome back to Freight Waves. Now, Bill Priestley here alongside Anthony Smith. And let's jump back into the world of rail. Joanna Marsh now joins us with an interesting new, perhaps gold rush, if you will, with a lot of companies looking at Mexico to the southeastern portion of the United States, perhaps as a new way, as a new stream of revenue there as well. Joanna joins us now. Joanna, how are you doing? And thanks for joining us. Obviously, well, not obviously, but looking at the situation now, all of a sudden, multiple companies, multiple rails are looking at trying to connect Mexico to the American Southeast.
Yeah, it is pretty interesting. Like you, so just recently, Canadian Pacific Kansas City and CSX, two Class 1 railroads, recently filed applications before the Surface Transportation Board asking to acquire portions of the Meridian and Big B Railroad, which is actually a short line operated by Genesee and Wyoming. So it's in the Southeast. And with the idea that they're going to create a more direct line between Mexico and the Southeast, and lots of companies, including Union Pacific, just announced a deal recently. That not really a deal. I'm sorry. Like announced an expanded offering to sort of beef up intermodal service between the two regions. And the reason why the rail companies are so interested in this is because. Really, because a lot of the manufacturing production that's expected to come online in both regions. I mean, of course, Mexico and the automotive plants there, and just lots of manufacturing opportunities as well, especially with the nearshoring. And then you have the Southeast, where a number of also automotive production plants are set to come online, and then, of course, you kind of talk about the growing population of the Southeast versus, the cold and dreary Northeast or someplace like that. So those two, they're seeking a better connection between those two regions, and kind of with the CSX and the CPKC plan, they're hoping to create an interchange in, Myrtlewood, Alabama, population 70. I looked it up, and
Wow.
Yeah, I know it's like a small town. To sort of facilitate that, because right now a lot of the Class 1 railroads interchange several places, of course, but New Orleans is one of the big interchange locations, and they're hoping to sort of put to not have to rely on New Orleans so much, especially because during certain times of the year. You have the hurricane threats as well. So, to have more options is always a nice thing to have.
And Joanna, we're looking at that border. Of course, it spans over quite a few states, looking at Arizona, of course, New Mexico, some parts of Southern California, and of course, Texas. Are we looking at any particular state in general that will likely have the majority of some of that rail activity?
I think really it's just that whole region. I mean, Texas is part of it as well, with the energy products and byproducts that occur there, and then of course I think CPKC and CSX were referring to intermodal and as well as automotive. So and then I think the Union Pacific plans were primarily intermodal, but that's so they're looking at intermodal right now. But that's not to say that carload traffic that carloads if you build it, they will come, kind of thing. So there is potential for that right now. But for now, it is intermodal and automotive that they're looking between those two regions.
So as you look at, you've had a chance to cover several of these sort of mergers or deals that have come up in rail to try to connect Mexico more intimately with the United States. This is obviously a new one going into basically a new region. In terms of this, I mean, this kind of has all happened at once, basically in the last year and a half or so. Why do you think so?
Well, I think a lot of it, in addition Well, I guess there are several reasons, really. The railroads themselves will say that it's their way of trying to gain market share from trucks. You look at all the materials that have been put out by the railroads. It's like, we're trying to win back market, and trying to be competitive with the truck market. So so you do have that factor, and of course the environmental considerations with shippers seeking more environmentally friendly options, of which rail is one compared to using trucks. I think also part of it has to do with the merger between Canadian Pacific and Kansas City Southern. Granted, that was more of a north-south thing between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico, but I think that kind of maybe there was maybe there were twinklings of ideas between connecting the southeast and the Mexico, but somehow that merger, that acquisition kind of spurred things on, or helped us kind of get the momentum rolling.
And Joanna, of course, we're talking about that immediate border area, but there have been some ripple effects as well. Can you talk to us about some of the impacts in Georgia, especially the ports there?
Yeah. So it's interesting because recently Georgia Ports Authority released their state of the port, I think, for Savannah, and it was talking about sort of global trade patterns and how you have companies seeking to expand their manufacturing base beyond China, so maybe still including China, but also maybe some other points in Southeast Asia as well. And then you also have India as a growing economy too. And so there's an interest both in imports and exports for further movement and to East Coast ports versus West Coast ports, and having ships go through the Suez Canal as an option. So Savannah, Georgia Ports Authority, and perhaps other Southeast ports, like the Jacksonville or the port in Charleston, South Carolina. I think they all see these as potential opportunities for them. Granted, maybe more share has gone back to the West Coast ports, because there was those labor uncertainties there. But I think lots of people are thinking that that some of the volume to the East Coast ports are here to stay, and especially with the shifting trade patterns. So that of course spills onto rail, because then you have movement from the Southeast to the Midwest, and from the Southeast to Mexico, and vice versa. So.
Okay, some stuff there, Joanna. Before we let you go, just any inklings that you've heard maybe about, obviously we've seen, CPKC, we've seen UP, CSX, any other developments happening? Because obviously we seem to be in a season of change, and it sounds like maybe there might be more on the way.
Yeah, well, I think that's definitely a message that the railroads are hoping to share and to get out there. Earnings are coming up. CSX and UP are releasing their earnings tomorrow, and that could certainly be on their minds during the analyst earnings call. So we'll see.
Awesome, Joanna. Well, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We'll be sure to follow up with you, especially during this earnings season, especially with you and Mike Baudistel, and we'll see what all the latest holds.